Okay, so I'm going to make
I
sure that
shouldn't
when
have
we preserve this on YouTube, that we
cut that
start
out.
the discussion right here, as
Okay, yeah,
so we don't
sorry.
embarrass. Because you never, I don't know who it was, Amelia. That person could be that person
Oh
could be
no, I didn't even think of it. Oh God, sorry.
you know. That's okay. Normally, it's me that will do that. This Cabernet from Walgreens opens up the truth tongue. You know what I'm saying?
Um,
Anyway,
well,
it
I
is
have no
7:05.
excuse because I'm dry January. So
It's
yeah.
quite all right. I would have you no other way.
Okay.
It's 7:05, so we'll get started, and I'll keep my eye on the queue in case folks join in late, as people often do. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to Screen Time. This is presented by the Chicago Screenwriters Network. My name is Neil O'Callahan. I will be your host this evening. We have a wonderful, wonderful speaker. Most of you are either are at least familiar with her work. It sounds like some of you already work with her in some capacity, in some creative capacity or another. She's a filmmaker. She's a writer. She's a creative consultant. She's a dog mom. She's a human mom. She's wonderful, and she's also one of the most vibrant personalities we've had on this series. And I look forward to her every time we can get her to talk on a topic. Her name is Amelia Dellos. Snap, 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 snap. And tonight we're going to be talking all about writer's block and some strategies to conquer it. Throughout the course of this talk, so we have Amelia has a presentation. There's a chat. Feel free as we hit various slides and you have questions, thoughts, ideas, anything that pops into your head, by all means, utilize that chat. Throw it in there and I will find an organic moment to pepper Amelia with the tough questions. And then at the end of the talk, we'll just throw it open to Q&A. We encourage discussion. The whole point of this is to kind of get ideas flowing. We have a blizzard on the way tomorrow. It's dark. It's one of those times of year where I feel like we can all sort of feel bogged down. And so that was why I thought the middle of January was a perfect time for this talk. So enough of my diatribe. Without further ado, Amelia Dellos, everybody. Yay.
Thank you. So writer's block. Oh my God. Just when Neil said the word writer's block, I don't know, did you guys did your heart kind of constrict a little? Like just even hearing it, it just kind of makes you a little like, oh. So can you guys see my presentation? Are we good? Okay.
You're good.
So tonight we are going to cover 3 types of creative blocks. We're going to talk about how to define writer's block. We're going to talk about vulnerability and the role that it plays in the creative process. We're going to talk about identifying resistance during the stages of a project. We're going to talk about some pro tips, continued reading recs, and then, of course, Q&As. And like Neil said, definitely we can, answer questions as we go along. So under writer's block, I think we kind of use it to talk about all of the issues that we have when we're doing creative projects or writing. But in my mind, there's 3 types of creative blocks. There's writer's block, there's procrastination, and then there's resistance. And we're going to go through all of those tonight. So Merriam-Webster they define writer's block as a psychological inhibition preventing a writer from proceeding with a piece. I don't know how it's a noun because it definitely feels like a verb. Like I said, just hearing the word, you just kind of like my heart hurts a bit. So writer's block, I define it as something that can last months or years. It prevents you from starting or finishing a project. It's an active avoidance of your creative work to the point where you don't return to it. And there's usually an underlying issue causing it. And to me, writer's block feels like apathy. Like, I don't care about the work. I don't want to go back to it. It's just an apathetic feeling about creativity or writing. So for me, I have a personal story. I never had an issue with it. I was one of those annoying writers. I talk to people and they talk about writer's block, and I just be like, "What's your deal? Just sit down and write. You're just being a baby." And I had some success. I produced 2 films. I wrote novels. Received some accolades. Had a film in the Women's Film Festival. Um, Received accolades from Sundance, the Writers Lab, Chicago International Film Festival. Like I had a nice little foundation, and things seemed like they were clicking along for me until they weren't. And I had some family issues. A parent got sick, some trouble with work. I mean, just like life stuff. And typically for me, the writing was always a place that I could go during all these really difficult times, and I could count on the writing. And when I couldn't, it was heartbreaking. And then it wasn't. Like I didn't write for 2 years. I went back to a 9 to 5 job, and I actually thought like I'm done. I'm done with this. And what I realized recently was that like I kind of hit a plateau and I wasn't leveling up. And to me, leveling up meant getting an agent, getting my 3rd film produced. And like I put so much pressure on those 2 things that it just took all the joy out of the writing. So if you want to read more about my story, you can check out my website, Amelia Tells Stories. And I wrote a blog called Writer's Block, My Story. So if you want to know a little bit more about that. But so I feel
typed
you.
it into the chat already,
Oh,
Amelia.
thank you. So I feel you. I've been there. All these things I'm talking about tonight, I've experienced firsthand myself. So procrastination is short term. It lasts a few days or weeks. Can manifest itself in surfing the web, cleaning a closet, baking, texting. Generally, you're puttering or dilly-dallying. 2 of my favorite words, 2 of my favorite things. I joke around that if puttering and dilly-dallying were like an Olympic sport, I'd have like gold medals. Like my walls would be lined with them. But eventually you find your way back to your work. And to me, procrastination actually feels a little bit like excitement. Like I have so much energy kind of that I can't settle down and do the work. Like it's that feeling right before a plane takes off and I'm just like so buzzing that I just can't settle down and like get into the work. Now, resistance can hit you beginning or during, and it's that so nice inner voice. And we all have that voice. It tells us we suck, we have no talent, we're imposters. Why are we doing this? We suck, we'll never be good at it. It can take you by surprise. It can come on fast. You got to be on guard. And usually when resistance hits, I feel like you start to feel bored with your work. You're like, this story, this play, this screenplay, this novel, it sucks. It's boring. I'm bored with it. Why would anyone want to read it? I can't even stand it. And resistance feels icky. It feels like you're this guy in the mud. You're just stuck and you can't. It's like you hit a wall and you're just like in the thick of it. The good news is, and yes, believe it or not, there is good news, that if you've experienced any of the above, you're actually in great company. And here are some of our writers who have experienced writer's block, resistance, procrastination. And I want to point to this guy here because I think he's got millions of fans all over the world who are waiting for that last book. And I don't know. I have a theory about him, why he won't finish it. And I'll share
You
that
can't
with
see
you.
your mouse. Can we get a clue as to which? I mean, I have a guess, and
It's
it's not Neil
George.
Gaiman.
No, it's not Neil Gaiman. It's George R. R. Martin, our Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones guy. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and I'll have a theory. I'll share it with you guys later. But the truth is, as a creative person, you're going to have to face and manage all of the above to keep writing. And I think that a lot of writers that I talk to are like, I'm going to kick this resistance ass for once and for all. And I just want to be like, no, you're not, because it's always going to be there. And the quicker you just accept that that's part of the process, you're already ahead of the game. Like if you're fighting the fact that you have to fight procrastination or resistance or any of this stuff, you're just like weighing yourself down. So let's just like, it's a part of the creative process. Everybody deals with it. You're going to have to deal with it. I deal with it. Let's just move on and not think it's something that we're going to like beat once and for all, because that's not the way that it works, unfortunately, especially if you're a creative person. So one thing that I really want to touch on just a bit is vulnerability. And because I think vulnerability is at the core of all of this, because we're pulling stuff out from inside of us and we're trying to show it to the world. And that's really hard. And I think that's probably all of us, the one thing that we all have in common within the creative world. And I love Brene Brown, and I really love the work that she's done around vulnerability. And I strongly encourage you to add her books to your arsenal of all your craft books, because we feel like vulnerability is weakness, and it's not. Vulnerability is courage. It's going out of your comfort zone. And here's the rub. Vulnerability is that intersection of creativity. And unless you can get comfortable with being vulnerable about yourself and your work, because that's what you are, uniquely you. And like, I have some writer friends that are on this call right now, and I've had a conversation with them saying, like, no one can tell your story. No one can. Like, there are other writers out there, but you are the person, your unique life experience, POV, whatever. But what the reader, the audience member, what they want from you is vulnerability and authenticity. So you got to get real comfortable with being vulnerable, because that's where true innovation and creativity, that's where it
Hey,
comes
Amelia,
from.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So if vulnerability is sort of the key to unlocking one of these, is one key to unlocking one part of writer's block, can you give us some ideas, or maybe some folks in the chat have some ideas as well, as how can we get into that headspace? Because I think it's one thing to talk about sort of, well, we need to be vulnerable. But as anybody who's ever experienced vulnerability, whether it's, a tumultuous relationship or job insecurity or money problems or something that leaves you exposed, it can be scary to want to go back into that headspace. And so I was just sort of wondering, do you have any thoughts on how do we get there?
That is a great question.
Every now and again, I have a good one.
That is a really, and it's such a good
journalism
question.
isn't just hanging on the wall for nothing.
So what I say for myself, like how I manage my vulnerability, is that I journal. I'm going to be very honest. I see a therapist once a week. I phone a friend. I participate in writers groups. I take part in women's groups. I think you're always looking for ways, like, you got to feel, like, I know it's so cheesy, but feel the fear and do it anyway. So if, like, you're going to go out of your comfort zone, then how are you then going to do it in a way that you feel supported and that you can do it and you can just tell the truth? And I think that's what any artist does. Any good art, any great artist worth their salt, whether they're a writer, a musician, a painter, an actor, they're able to get to that vulnerable space and really show you who they are in an authentic way. So I think that's how I manage it. I'm kind of an open book anyway, and I'm fairly open and vulnerable, I think, in my life. So it's kind of a crazy question for me, because I just live my life like that. But does anyone else have any? I would love to hear if anyone else wants to, like, what they think about it.
Yeah, no, it's a great tool and it's a great thought. That's why I was just sort of curious, like, is there more that we can, can we scratch a little deeper? That's all.
Yeah, but I really think Brene Brown is, like, she's done an amazing work, and I really,
Anyway,
recommend.
I didn't want to derail our momentum.
No worries.
Maybe we can, at the end, when we go into like a hard Q&A, we can circle back to it, and folks will have like fuller formed.
They'll probably start thinking about it too while we're going through. Okay. So I want to talk about resistance during a project. So resistance to me usually comes up during that active project. You have an idea, you're staring down the blank page, you're mid-project, you're just in a labyrinth, you're almost done, you can't get through. So I found like some of the best writers that we know and what they've had to say about it. And Mark Twain talked about outlining, and I've been burned more than once by not outlining. And I think it's important. I don't know that you have to get super specific. Like I know there's some outlines like that you can see, like I think Save the Cat has an outline and there's others, but just having an idea of like, I always know where I'm writing to, what the end is going to be. But I think like really just, like he said here, breaking down into like small tasks, small manageable tasks, and then starting on the first one. And then it's you against the blank page. So Maya Angelou, she says she just writes, she would write. And even if she was writing, the cat sat on the mat, that's what she was doing. It might just be boring or awful. What I always call this is giving yourself permission for the garbage draft or the vomit draft, just giving yourself freedom to start. I personally love writing the vomit draft because I can just write and I don't have to think about all the technical stuff. But if you're struggling with that, just give yourself permission to just write whatever comes out. And then of course, there is that mid-project slump. And I love this from Neil Gaiman. It's like, put it aside, let it simmer, print it out. I really think printing things out, you can miss a lot when you're looking at the screen, but give yourself some space and then you can kind of go back and look at it with some fresh eyes. And then the end, I just finished a major
Amelia, can I ask you a real quick question before you get to John Steinbeck?
Sure.
So you mentioned that quote. If you can you go back one slide so we can have that? It's great. It's a great quote from Neil Gaiman. So he talks about putting it aside, sort of like what comes up with the mid-project slump. But earlier on, we spoke about apathy and how you can find yourself puttering around and organizing the closet and polishing a bowling ball or whatever it is that you happen to have in your particular closet. Maybe it's a metaphorical bowling ball. I don't know. Your closet is your own business. But can you differentiate between putting your project aside and knowing when it turns into apathy? Because I feel like that
and I actually, when I get into my pro tips, I talk about that, but I think it's really knowing yourself. And because there are times where you do need to push through and really, keep on the gas and keep going. And then there are times where you do just need to walk away and give yourself a little space. And that's really about knowing yourself. Hopefully you're in a community of writers where you can kind of talk to each other. Maria, who's on this, there have been times I text her and she's like, go for a walk. Just go for a walk. And tomorrow you'll have a Friday. Sometimes you just need to do that. And then there are other times where you just kind of need to stay and sit down. But I think just knowing yourself, knowing where you are in the process. And yeah.
Okay. It's all good. I just was like, we were there and that idea popped into my head. And
sure,
I was
of course. We'll talk about it a little
bit. I wrote
more.
it down, but my chicken scratch sometimes I'm like, I won't remember. I won't ask it right now. So, anyway, continue.
So I just recently did a major rehaul on a novel I've been working on. And towards the end, it got, and I remember reading something about marathons where marathon runners, when they get to the 24th mile, they quit, even though they only have 2 miles to go. And I think about that all the time when I'm working on a project and I get towards the end and it's just really tough. And I love this thought from John Steinbeck where it's like just one page at a time, just let go of like, I got to finish it. Just focus on, I'm just going to do this one page and then kind of get yourself going and just know that like there's this when you get to the end, sometimes that's when the resistance comes up the hardest. Like you're almost there, you're almost done, you're on the 24th mile and you just want to toss it. So I have some pro tips that I'm going to go through. So the first one is identify it. So like, what does it look like to you? What does procrastination, resistance, or writer's block look like for you? For me, procrastination is I've blocked out 2 hours to write, and I find myself cleaning out the refrigerator or cleaning a closet or just doing something that, yeah, that I have this time and I'm just gonna, I get all this energy, and all of a sudden, like the thought of sitting down, I just want to go clean something. And then, to your point, here it is. Here's knowing yourself. So there are times,
Dress
like I
accordingly.
said, yeah, you're going to have to push through it. You need to step away. And that's really kind of under having an awareness. And I think if anything I can take away that I can give you guys tonight is just an awareness that like what you're going through, whatever it is, it's totally normal. Every creative writer experiences it. And if you're able to identify it as it's happening, you're like, oh, this is what this is. I am like, for me, procrastination starts right as I start a project because I'm so excited and I have all these ideas and all these nerves, like butterfly first day. And it takes me a while to like calm myself down, to just sit down and start the work. And I just know, I'm like, oh, that's what's happening here. Having a plan. So I think this is so important that we're all so busy, and I see there's some, women on the call tonight, and, with family and care and all that and work, just being able to schedule time. Do you have a target word count, scene count? Do you have a production writing schedule in place? Like I use Excel, and I also use Mondays. Mondays is a project management tool. And like I just did this rewrite of my novel, and I had a very aggressive schedule. I was supposed to finish it. I started in June and I wanted to finish the rewrite by September, the end of September. I ended up not finishing it until like mid-December, but I kept just updating my production schedule, and I just kept plugging along. And I kind of put myself, I crazily thought I was going to write 3 chapters a week at 2,000 words a chapter. Like that was aggressive, probably didn't set up a realistic expectation for myself, but having a plan is important. And this one took me a really long time to get into my thick skull, is not going it alone. Because we're writers, it's a solitary thing that we do. But I this year found that being in community, not only does it help you be accountable, but it keeps you motivated. It keeps you like just on track, because what we're doing, it's hard, and it's really, really hard to do it by yourself when you don't have someone that you can text or call or talk to who kind of knows what you're going through, who can just say like, okay, you're doing great, just keep on going. And asking for help is another one. And whether it's talking to a friend, another writer, a therapist, if you need one, a writing coach, whatever it is, just having someone that you can talk to and reach out when you're kind of stuck, whether it's on craft or it's more of like a mental block. And then focusing on the craft. This really helped me this year when I was like, okay, I'm just going to focus on being the best writer I can be. I took a class at Gotham in New York, the Gotham Writers Workshop, and it just broke open some things that broke open the writer's block. It was helpful to get critique on my work, to be able to, you learned so much by critiquing others' work, entering contests, watching movies, listening to creative podcasts, like whatever it is, just focus on the craft, and everything else I think kind of falls into place. And then thinking like a student. So, look at yourself as a work in progress. None of the greats that we talked about, they were like you and me. And I think when you look at it, like if you're a little gentler with yourself and say like, I'm just a student and I'm learning and I want to be better. And besides, look how adorable she is. Like we all have that student inside us. So just like be nice to that student. Get inspired. This one's a little harder, I admit. For me, going to like live concerts and museums and theater is always so inspirational, but we unfortunately can't do that right now. So I've been reading a lot. Baking for me, or I'm sorry, I'm not a baker. My daughter bakes. Cooking for me is very inspirational. It's very creative. It's a golden age of television, so we can't say there's nothing good on. So there's like lots of good stuff to watch, and there's like tons of like old movies too that like we have the time now. So like let's watch them and have fun. I think for me that like what was lost in those 2 years was like fun. And writing, yes, it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, but it's like fun ultimately, and it can and should be. And like being able to find that fun again is so important. And celebrating your wins, big and small. And this is something that in my writers groups, we talk about, like at the end of the year, we sat down and everyone wrote out all the things that they finished, what they were proud of, and I think Maria Kay, she's on the call, and she was like, she did it. She's like, oh my God, I didn't realize like I had done all this stuff in the last year. And you're like, yeah, like that's amazing. Like for me, I'm super proud of the fact that I had a short story published in an anthology on writing in place about the pandemic. And short stories for me have always been like a really hard nut to crack. I was never able to like understand the mechanism, the structure, and I did the story and the book. It was an anthology, and it ended up at like number 4 and like essays and 14 and short stories. And I can't take credit for that because there were like 20 other writers in it, but just like it felt really good to just learn, like crack, like I said, crack that short story nut and then have it published. And so anything that you have, starting, finishing, contest finalage, good coverage, whatever. And then finally, like giving yourself a break. We are in a pandemic, and for some people, the pandemic has been super creative. And for others, like my daughter is a huge Taylor Swift fan. She released like 2 albums with like 20 songs. So Tay Tay is having a very good pandemic creatively. Some of us are not. Some people are finding it really hard to create right now. For me, what I'm noticing most of all is I'm creating and I'm working, but I really can only give it short bursts where in the past I'd be able to sit down for like 3 or 4 hours. And now it's like if I get 90 minutes, I'm like, okay, 1. So, just understanding that whatever's going on, it's okay. And then one last thought, I want to talk a little bit about the hero's journey. And this is one of my favorite books. I highly recommend it. It's The Writer's Journey by Christopher Voigler. And at
Wait. Can you go
what?
back to that last slide? Did you draw that yourself? That's
No. I got that from
all right.
no. I got that from online. No.
Never mind.
No, that's okay. Sorry. And so at the end, he talks about the writer's journey being similar to the hero's journey, which I think is so true. And I love this quote. And it's like, anyone setting out to write a story soon encounters all the tests, trials, and ordeals and rewards of the hero's journey. Writing is an often perilous journey inward to probe the depths of one's soul and bring back the elixir of experience, a good story. So I think really understanding that, like, as we put our characters through the hero's journey, we're going through that journey as well. And it's, some days it can be good and some days it can be a little tough. And then for recommended reading, I'm sure most of you know The War of Art. I think that one's been around forever. I also love Big Magic. I've given that book to a lot of creative people I know because I just think it's an amazing book by Elizabeth Gilbert. And then, of course, Brene Brown. We touched a little bit on Rising Strong and her vulnerability work, and I highly recommend, doing maybe a little bit more of a deep dive on that. And then I'm starting a writing group on February 1st for 4 weeks, and come write with me. And I'm offering a half price discount for anyone who's attending this this workshop or you don't necessarily have to be a Chicago Screenwrite Networking member.
And I'll make sure we get an email out to everybody that
Sure.
RSVP'd as well. So if
Sure.
you don't have to write furiously, I'll make sure I get the discount code and everything.
And then I'm also a writing coach. So if you need help with developmental notes, beta reading, personal coach, whatever, I offer those services. And you can find, here's like my online shingles, my Insta and Facebook. Drop me an email, follow me, I'll follow you. Here's all my stuff where you can find me. And that's all.
Yay. Clap, clap, clap. Snaps.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Okay, stop it.
You have
share.
Wonder
Okay.
Woman on your desktop. That is
yeah.
So we got a little window. We got inside a little window into your head, Amelia. I love it. Okay, everybody. So we have a little over 20 minutes for a little Q&A, a little discussion. Any questions that have been sort of bubbling up to the surface as you've been absorbing all of this, taking notes, or just sort of thoughts? Since we have obviously this is presented by the Chicago Screenwriters Network, but we might have folks on here who your discipline isn't necessarily screenwriting. I'm curious to know what you're working on. So in advance of whatever question you may have, identify yourself by what you're doing, whether it's prose or poetry or short stories or, scripts or, pilots or whatever it is. Just for my own personal, I think it's fun to sort of know who the writers are and what they're working on in the room. So I'm going to switch to a grid view here so I can see all your smiling faces. And if anybody has any questions, please, by all means, raise your hand. I'll call on you, unmute yourself, and jump on in with whatever question you might have. Otherwise, I have an entire notebook full of questions. And yeah, I'm not lying. I did get my degree in journalism. I thought for a while I was going to work for the Boston Globe. Anyway, so let's throw the floor open to questions. I can see all your smiling faces here. So don't be shy. Jump on in there. And let's have a discussion, y'all. Yeah, that's right. The guy from Boston said, y'all. It's okay. It's fine. You know what? Hi, Rosalia.
Okay, great. Okay, so I have had writer's block and procrastination as you describe it, but 2 years, that length of time terrifies me. So when did you think, okay, I'm going to write again? And when did you want to write again?
So COVID hit and I had left writing. I had a really good 9-to-5 working for the Illinois Lottery doing PR. I was the director of PR. I loved my job. I was doing a lot of video content, so it really played to my film strengths. And then COVID hit and I got let go. I got laid off. And I don't know, I was just online and I was looking for classes and I came across through Gotham, it's called Pen on Fire. And so Rosalia and we know each other from our writers group, which Barbara, who teaches Pen on Fire, wrote a book called Pen on Fire. And so I took that class and she had these bite-sized mini lessons for us to do each week. And then and free writing, and I never done free writing. And so free writing, if you know what it is, I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk down to you, but free writing is you get a prompt like Snow and you start writing for 5 to 7 minutes. And then you read out loud what you wrote to the group. And just doing the free writing and, it just I started having fun again. And then I had this time of not working and I had this novel that I knew needed to be rewritten. And I just kind of got into it again.
Excellent. Thank you, Rosalia. Who's next? Anybody else with a question for Amelia. I see Ryan has unmuted himself because I've got the widescreen going here. So all the icons are super giant in my face.
Yeah,
Hi,
and
Ryan.
there's some questions in the
Hello.
chat too. Okay, go on, Ryan.
Sorry to interrupt. Were you saying something?
No, there's some questions in the chat too. I was just letting,
I'm
Neil know.
gonna grab them next.
Okay, go on, Ryan. Okay.
I was just gonna ask, like, in addition to, like, you had mentioned concerts and going to museums, books and movies, like, where else can you find inspiration and wisdom from? I know some people can find it through different platforms.
Yeah, like for me, like hiking and walking is also very like with the creative process, like especially if I'm stuck, I'll go for a walk. And even though I'm a city person, like I do kind of like nature. So that helps to get kind of inspired. I think really taking some classes kind of can help too, like online classes just to kind of get kind of going. And I also think like doing a bit of journaling helps because before we clicked on, like we were talking about dreams and how, and then Gretchen, I just wrote a story, she had a dream and then she wrote a short story based on the dream. So I think like just being very aware of like, did you have a crazy dream and you want to write about it? Journaling, kind of like what's going on in your life, that kind of thing. Did that help, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. That was
Okay.
very helpful. Thank you very much.
Can I
Actually,
add just
because
kind of
you
like,
mentioned I'm sorry. I looked down real quick. Gretchen, I'm so sorry.
No worries. Hi, I'm Gretchen. I'm a writer, essays, short stories, fiction, nonfiction.
Cool.
So I was just gonna say, like, to add on to what Amy's saying as far as like taking a walk, I actually have found this to be super useful lately, is that I'm listening to writers on my walk. So like I just got Ann Patchett's book on Audible. Fantastic. Like I feel every time I listen to it and I go walking, I come back and I'm like ready, because she has such really practical advice for writers and just, doing it. Like, so by the time I'm done with my walk, I kind of feel like empowered just based on her words. And so I totally recommend hearing about other writers and what they go through. I think is super helpful for me.
That's a great, and I also think too, like, I love to read, and sometimes I think we're a little snobby when it comes to audiobooks, but I think listening to stories sometimes we should listen to, because you catch rhythms in writing that you don't necessarily get as you're reading. And I love to read. I have 4 books going right now. I love watching movies. I love watching TV. Like I'm all about all of it. But I think listening to stories, like it helps. Like in one of my classes, we had to read a Chekhov story, and then and it was a short story, like a lesser known Chekhov. And then I listened to the story. An actor did like a you guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, and he reading it and then hearing the actor go through the beats, it was like, oh, okay, like you hear things that you don't normally hear. So I think listening to stories as well as listening to other creative people talk to, super important for inspiration.
Amelia, I meant to jump in with this real quick when Ryan was asking his question, because your answer involved classes. And I think we sort of discussed this a little bit earlier on. And you mentioned obviously writing classes, creative classes and such, but what are your thoughts on other types of classes? Like anything else that you can think of that might sort of
I mean, I think
unlock the brain that maybe doesn't have anything to do with pen to paper?
Yeah, I think anything, like we were talking about yoga, meditation. For a while, I was practicing transcendental meditation for like 20 minutes a day, and it was amazing.
Ooh, like David Lynch.
Like David Lynch, and there are a lot of famous people like Jerry Seinfeld, and there's a bunch of people. I've been in art class. Yeah, I do paint by numbers. Is like I'm kind of addicted to that right now. I do cross stitch. Yeah, I love like yoga, Pilates. Yeah, anything kind of creative. Like what's good for me with the paint by numbers is that I'm not good at it and it's kind of sloppy. And then my husband, I'm like, oh, this doesn't look so good. And he's like, yeah, remember, we're just doing it for fun. Like you don't have to be good at it. Like you don't have to like hone your craft. You just like slap the paint on and it feels kind of good, you know? So, but yeah, I think anything like that. But with the TM, I don't know, for some reason, once we got into pandemic, I couldn't, having trouble meditating. I need to get back to it. But yeah.
Well, and
Adrian
the
had a
other,
great.
oh, sorry.
Gretchen again. I keep doing
I know,
that.
no.
I'm
I'm
so
sorry. I
It's
don't
'cause
need to.
My
I don't need to.
webcam is down here and the screen is up here. So if I look up there, I'm not looking here. Or I'm so sorry. Go ahead. What did you have?
I was just going to add on again and just say, like, that is a part of the process. I think that taking that time and doing something else, you know, gardening, whatever, I get so much from that. Painting, like painting a bookshelf, it just getting and letting your mind, like doing something active and letting your mind wander is so helpful, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's really important too. Like Gretchen brought up another great point is that like when you're say you're in that midpoint and you're stuck on the story, like going and gardening or going for a walk or going to like bake something or whatever, yeah, like take a break from it. Like what I typically do is if I'm stuck in a story, I'll write it down as a question. Like like, oh, there's something not right here. It's not working. And like, I'll write it down on my notebook and then I'll go away and I'll just be like, all right, I'm just going to like, it's a puzzle. I haven't quite figured it out yet. I'm just going to write it down. I do handwrite a lot too. Because of the free writing, Ryan, you free write, it's pen to paper. And I've been finding myself doing more pen to paper and then taking it to the computer to transfer. So I think there's something in that too. Having, like I'll work stuff out in my notebook and I have like stickers and I have colored pens and it's very like, I'm a little embarrassed to show you guys my notebook, but like, it's, like I get these like really fun notebooks. I don't know if you can see it with my, it's like, I don't know if you guys are seeing it. I'm sorry, because I have my background and like I have all these like fun colors and pens and stickers and like just have fun, you know? All right.
Adrian had a good question. And BT Dubs,
Okay.
it was 7:39, so she was first. I missed
Adrian.
I missed it. I was looking down and not up, and it's the whole.
Adrian has an awesome
told you guys that.
fireplace. I want to be at Adrian's house right now, sitting by the fireplace, drinking tea.
Yeah.
Talking about
I
writing.
can't tell
Maybe
if it's
next
a backdrop
time.
or if she's actually there on vacation. For those of us who may be left-brained people by day, any tips on how to quickly transition to the right side of the brain for an effective writing session?
That's a great question. That is a great question. Well, I mean, I think what's great if you have that left brain, like when I was talking about a plan and a schedule, like that probably really spoke to you. I think maybe some free writing would probably help with that. Just giving yourself a prompt, getting a notebook, getting some fun pens, and just kind of free writing. I know there are some people who really like morning pages where they just get up and write. And I think it's also finding the time. There was a time for me where early mornings, like 5:45, 6 o'clock, that was my writing creative time. And then now since COVID and my schedule's blown up, I'm finding 2 o'clock in the afternoon is my time where I'm getting, so really kind of figuring out, Adrian, when's a good time. Free writing, I think, is a really good way to get yourself, maybe even doing like a quick 5-minute meditation so you just kind of clear out the day and go into your work. Yeah.
I have a couple of morning pages links that have been collecting dust in my bookmarks as well. I can share them I try to do like a post chat email to everybody who RSVP'd, so I can send out those links as well. Maybe they'll be helpful. Maybe they won't. Maybe you'll hate them. Maybe you'll be like, I hate checking out the Screenwriters Network. They're stupid.
I don't know. Some people love the morning pages.
They could be there. I find them kind of helpful, and I cycle through them sort of. Well, not recently, but I found myself cycling through them a few times, and some of the prompts I thought, since they were outside of my comfort zone, were helpful because it forced me to write about, this, that, or whatever that just wasn't necessarily something that I would have necessarily considered in my wheelhouse. So anyway, sorry. Are we all caught up? Does anyone else have any questions? Maria, you were so chatty before we got started, and I was wondering if you had anything. No?
Well, Maria and I, we're in a writing group together too. So she's like, I pretty much heard this whole presentation at some point or another.
Well, then that is an excellent segue. If there's one thing I can do,
a pep talk last week. So,
well, if there's one thing I can do, it's set up my own segue, and that is, so earlier on you mentioned a writing group, a collective, sort of getting input from other folks other than yourself. And I wanted to know if you could expand on that a little bit. Like, what should your expectation level be if you're what if it's not like an official writing group? Like, who should you seek input from when you're writing something? Is anyone good, or is there a specific list, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
Like, are you talking about notes specifically, you're looking for a writing coach? Or
I wrote this down fairly early on, so I think it was
so
in response to one of the slides where it was sort of breaking out of like you're in that rut. And you mentioned having sort of a writing group, and my thought was, well, what if you don't have a formal writing group? Like, who would be somebody that you would share these things with?
Well, I think you kind of I don't know, because I think you sort of need a some formality. I met my Tuesday night writing group. Most of those writers are from a class, and then my Wednesday night group is the teacher. So I think you'd want to be in community with people who are, and in all those groups, Maria's working on a novel, and she has a very amazing history of working in media and as a journalist. And in the groups we have varying levels of people, which I think makes that's the special sauce. Because if you're all novices and you're doing it, it's not great. And then you do want to have people who kind of have some background. And then I think it's really important with notes. Like, recently it's been hilarious because I have been getting notes, and I've been getting the same note from everyone. Our Wednesday night group, I presented my blog on my creative Black story, and they all gave me the same note. So then it was like, okay, well, clearly everyone gave me that note, so I need to address that. So I think it's, notes are tricky. Workshops are tricky. They can screw you up. I did a workshop, and it probably led to a little bit of my writer's block. So I think what do
you mean by that? Like, I mean, you don't have to talk trash about anybody, but
no, it just wasn't.
I mean, unless you want to talk trash, in which case,
no, I don't want to talk trash about anybody. Because I think what I've talked about, and I think with the writers that I work with and that we are in community together, we all know you have to be in a mental place where you can accept feedback and not necessarily take it, but accept it. And if you're not in the right mind space, and someone, because it is so vulnerable, getting back to vulnerability, and someone's giving you lots of notes or feedback, or for me, notes can be very overwhelming. And a lot of times I kind of put them aside. I don't address them right away because I need to let them sit. And then I go back and I look at them. Because if you're getting 5 different notes from 5, I had one guy, my one character was British, and he's like, why is this guy British? I don't understand why he's British. And I'm like, because British men are hot. And then I started rewriting the whole thing without the guy being British. And I'm like, what am I listening to this jamoke in my writing group that I just make him British. You want him to be British. Who cares? So I think you have to be in the right frame of mind. And there's a show that I've been recommending called Game Face, and it's a British comedy, and she does there's this whole thing about a writing workshop where the girl was like eviscerating this other person's work, and she's like, the character was eating scrambled eggs and I liked that. And like, so you got to be kind of like in the right place to receive it and be professional enough to give it to. So I don't know. You got me started on something there. You really
I got
me.
you, Gretchen. Go for it. This time I got you.
Well, I was just to add again on to, because Amelia, I call her Amy because I've known her forever, but she's like my trusted person. So even if you don't have a group, I think even just having a trusted reader is just absolutely super important. And that somebody, you know, that you realize, like, because a lot of times with writers groups, I don't know about you, Amy, but there can be that overwhelming stuff. And, you know, you have to trust yourself, right? Because if you get, you know, 6 different notes from people, you have to be able to discern those and know what to take from it and then what to
throw
say,
out. Yeah,
maybe not.
because
You know
not
what I
every
mean?
note is valid.
Yeah.
You know, and it's your story, you know it. We talk, like the group I'm in with Maria Kay, we talk about that a lot, you know, and it's like, it's your story. Like, this is just my opinion, and you take what feels right, and you got to be in a good space that you can be like, no, that does not feel right to me. And I'm like, I rewrote this whole character because of this one, you know, this is so stupid. So like, you got to be like, and like Gretchen said, you do have to have trusted advisors and people that you respect them and you respect their work, and you know, their opinion matters to you.
I mean, I have 2 thoughts. Some British men are hot, some not. And scrambled eggs are delicious. So we can.
You have to. This show is called Game Face, and it's hilarious. And just, oh, you gotta watch it.
I spotted Maria's hand. Go for it, Maria.
I just wanted to add on the writing groups. Sometimes you have to experiment a little. I didn't belong to any writers groups for a really long time. And I thought, I was hearing people talking about it, and I thought I need to find a writing group. And hey, there's one at my local library. And I went to it a couple of times, and it wasn't the right place for me. So I realized that quickly. So then
why do you, I'm curious. So how did you, I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you're gonna bring these up, we're gonna ask the question. Like, so what, I was gonna say, like, how did you know, what was the feeling like when you were like, no thanks?
The feeling that I got was that some of the people there were very willing to critique, but their critiques were more, almost felt like jabs instead of being constructive criticisms. And the first day that I walked in there, there was a man sitting there, and he held up a copy of his book, and he said, I can't believe I'm not selling this book. And I said, so who's your market? And it took him a while to kind of express who his target reader was. And then I asked him, do you have a website? And he said, I don't need a website. I've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm on this board and whatever. And I don't need that stuff.
Wait, was this man Rahm Emanuel? Who was this?
No. And then there was another woman in there, and she held up this beautiful book, and it looked like a children's book. It was all about ballerinas. And she was saying, I can't believe I can't sell this book. I spent so much money self-publishing it. And I said, where are you trying to sell this? And she said, I don't know. And I said, and I was just looking through the pictures, and I said, have you talked to any dance studios? And she's like, this book isn't for kids.
Oh.
Okay. So then I went online and I found another group, and I went there, and there were writers there of varying levels of experience. There were some self-published writers, there are some newbies, that sort of thing. And I got the feeling there that people came in to read just to say, don't critique me. Just, hey, look at me, I'm awesome. I wrote this, but don't critique me. And I felt like some of the critiques that people were giving every week, and not particularly to me, but were not very constructive. So I thought, yeah, this isn't the right place for me. So I'm in this writing group with Amelia, and she invited me there in the end of the summer. And I have to say, just the whole spirit of the group was so different.
She's listening, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah,
Just
I
she's
know.
here. She's in the call. She's on the call. Okay.
No, just the whole spirit of the group, and it felt more like I had cheerleaders, and people were cheering me on every week, and they were excited to hear about what I was doing, and we're helping each other and working together and looking forward to what everyone's going to present every week. And like I'm like, oh, today's Tuesday, it's writers group, yay. So it just, you kind of have to look around and experiment a little to find your home.
And
Maria, a follow-up question. I had a follow-up question for you.
I put her in here so she could talk about. Go on.
Well, no, but I mean, maybe I'm selling your wares as well. But my question was, so what are your thoughts on then sort of, I guess this, the writing group that you're in meets weekly? How would you say that affects the structure? I mean, I know Barbara asked a question earlier about sort of getting into the right headspace where you're structuring your week. Would you say that a regular writing group helps sort of police your like, well, I can't be too apathetic. But I also can't stress myself out too much, but maybe I have like a paragraph or something to bring on Wednesdays or whenever it is that your group meets?
Yes. So I last week was the first week I didn't present anything for critique, which was a little strange for me, but I needed that little bit of time away. But so it kind of helps me keep focused and keep on track of, because I have a schedule of when I want to finish editing my manuscript. So it kind of helps me stay on track. But then also I have to plan my schedule accordingly, because I need to take the time to read other people's work and kind of synthesize it and think about my critiques, because they're helping me. I want to help them too. So giving and taking, of course. And one other great thing about it, and I had never done this before, was the free writes. So the free write was so much fun. And it's so much fun. And, pen and paper, you use a different part of your brain than, kind of typing. But it really seemed to unlock something for me, because like I've been working in Greek media for 19 years, and like everything I write has to do with something Greek. And so this was like the first time I'd start writing something else. And then I was finding I would go out on a walk, and I came back, and one day I wrote a poem, and I wrote a couple of things about seasons, and it just kind of opened up this thing for me that I probably never would have explored.
Yeah, so usually a typical writing group will do a free write. We'll check in, we do a free write, we read our free write, we do our critiques. If we don't have a ton to critique that week, we'll talk about sometimes one of the other people in the group, if they took a class or something and they want to teach the group. Last week we talked about, we had a really good discussion. Why am I blanking?
Where we were at.
What was it?
It's kind of a status and where we were at.
Where we were at and how we were feeling about our writing and creativity. We were feeling good about it. So, and then we really try to keep our critiques to kind of bigger issues. Like we don't really get into like the nitty gritty of like copy editing and that kind of thing. It's more developmental, character, story, setting, that kind of thing. Things that the writer can easily address and just kind of work on. So that's
we'll refer to those as scrambled egg notes from now on, everybody.
Yeah, scrambled eggs. But yeah, so I think it's really important to, like, and having someone who can like mediate the group too, because if you need to have someone kind of leading it, moving it around and keeping everyone on task and that kind of thing.
It becomes even more important as you're progressing through, because you're so into your work and you see it in your head, and maybe you're not translating it, and so you need someone else to read it and give you some feedback, because you're so in it, you can't look at it objectively.
And I think critiquing other people's work is so important for your own development as a writer, because you are being able to read with a critical, not critical in a negative way, but like a critical eye, in terms of like, it teaches you how to structure things. And it's such a learning process, not, it's like a give and take. And I think being able to give feedback, and like a couple months ago did a notes seminar, but being able to give good notes and is so important to the writing process.
All right, fine, Amelia. We'll let you give that talk again. All
I
right.
will come back and do
We're
the
gonna
notes
get the
again.
audio all figured out this time, and
Yeah,
we'll
I'll do the notes again. Yeah.
Okay, I
will do the
get
notes
it.
again.
Ugh.
Yeah, I have some other ideas for you guys too that we'll talk about.
Anyway, it is 8:05. We have gone exactly 60 minutes. So unless anybody else has any other questions, thoughts, concerns, things that you really would like to get off your chest at this time, now is the time for you to air your grievances. Good, great. I always clench up a little bit after I say that. And I'm glad nobody had any grievances to air. So
Well, I just really want to thank everyone. Thank you for having me again. Thank you guys for coming and sharing this time with me. And, I always joke around. I always say, may the muse be with you now and always. That's my sign off for my email. So.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say to close it out. And now I have nothing to say to close out this call. So I guess I'll just say thank you to our speaker this evening, Amelia Dellos. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Snap, 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 snap. Thank you so much for joining us, you guys. This has been really amazing. It was great discussion. I always, we were talking about this before this got started, that I would rather have 14 people on a call or in our virtual event space, as it were, so to speak, that are passionate about writing, about ideas exchange, and rather than 50 people who are just dead behind the eyes and have nothing to contribute. So applause to all of you as well. Thank you so much. We're going to have this, I'll send out an email to everybody with a link to this talk in case there's any notes or anything that you missed. It'll be live through the end of the month. And any other thoughts, questions, or anything you might have, feel free to email me, respond to the message that I send out. Amelia, you were wonderful. I enjoy all your ideas, everything that you ever bring to the table. You're my muse.
Well, thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Otherwise, have a good week, everybody.
Yeah.
Wear your damn masks, and don't forget to shovel and use pet sensitive salt when you salt your walkways. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Night.